The 90s were a booming time for PC adventure games, and while most followed similar point-and-click tropes, one stood out as being the strangest yet arguably most inventive of the bunch. Designed by Drew Hoffman and directed by Vinnie Corella, Bad Mojo was inspired by the Franz Kafka novella The Metamorphosis, and has you taking on the role of a man who, through the power of a magical locket, gets turned into a cockroach. The game was originally released on February 29, 1996, but today I'll be playing through the Redux version, which came out in 2004 and is currently available on GOG for $1.49. We begin this sordid tale with a cutscene introducing us to the main character, Roger Sams, played by Michael X. Summers, who you may recognize from the Netflix series Sense8. Sams is an entomologist who recently embezzled a suitcase full of cash from the university he works at in order to get out of the squalid apartment he lives in and make a better life for himself in Mexico. He has a cat named Franz, which will play a larger role in the game later on, and we're also introduced to his schlubby landlord Eddie, played by Michael Gilliam, who was most recently on the show Louie for 4 episodes.
It's 3 days late, I'll take it now.
Don't push me, old man. I said you'll get it in the morning.
Looks like you're packing up for a trip. You skipping out on me?
Yeah, I'm skipping out. Look, if I pay you now, will you get the hell out of here and leave me alone?
Sure, sweetheart. Sure, I'll leave you alone.
Just when Roger's about to make off with the cash, the locket his mother gave him begins to glow, and before he knows it, he gets turned into a roach. Now Roger must find a way out of this dire situation without getting killed in the process. The game takes place in separate rooms throughout the apartment building, which also has a bar on its ground floor. You begin in the basement where Eddie lives, and get quickly onboarded to the base mechanics of the game. It's pretty simple actually. You're a roach and you need to figure out a way to get through various obstacles in your path, while slowly uncovering the story behind everything that's going on. As a roach, your options are pretty limited with interactions, so there's no inventory management here. You simply use the arrow keys to move around. You can push certain things, but most of the game relies on exploration as you traverse this disgusting environment. As usual, I'll be going through the entire game, so if you don't want anything spoiled, it's best that you come back after playing. Because this is a very different kind of adventure game than your typical point-and-click fare, the designers were very concerned with the player not being able to understand what to do or where to go, and as such, there are a ton of clues strewn about, even in the opening cutscene. We begin our journey scurrying across the basement floor until we find a furnace where a fellow roach gives us a clue as to what we need to do next.
The wind whale will suck you into the belly of a beast. Its blowhole will catapult you to the south and to the east. One way there is peril, hardship, and dismay. One way brings you closer to the Dominican cachet. But there is another option, another clever tack. You may evade the wind machine with a bold high wire act.
It should already be apparent, but this game is incredibly gross, using a mixture of pre-rendered CGI modeled backgrounds and digitized photos. As we make our way across the floor looking for the vacuum, we come across a dead rat in a trap. It's best to avoid its mouth. I remember playing this as a kid, and if you get too close, it eats you. This is actually a photo of a real dead rat that director Vinnie Corella procured from a local exterminator. Next, we have the first puzzle in the game that involves pushing something. In this case, we need to get past the spider by moving the lit cigarette in front of it. Down the path, we end up in a roach motel and need to carefully navigate through it without touching any of the glue. At the end, we need to push this grub thing over the corpse of a bug to create a bridge. Unlike many adventure titles of this generation, the puzzles in Bad Mojo are fairly straightforward and intuitive. While I did play through this many years ago, the only times I found myself stuck were when I wasn't sure where to go, but I eventually found my way and didn't have to consult a walkthrough at all for this one. The pushing mechanic is a bit clunky, however, and sometimes it can be a bit frustrating. The same goes for navigation. Even though traveling from one room to the next is streamlined through this tunnel system, it can get a bit dull when you realize that you need to go from one end all the way to the other. We make our way up a table and we found the vacuum the other roach mentioned, and a cutscene plays where we see Eddie getting pissed about the radio and taking Franz out of the room.
Come on, Francie.
The vacuum turns itself on and we need to walk around the end so as to not get sucked into it. If we go to the back of it, we get blown across the room to Eddie's cot and nightstand, along with the various other disgusting bits of detritus he keeps around him. Climbing up the nightstand, we enter the radio and fix it by walking across the electronics, another in a series of electrical related tasks we'll be performing, posing the question, what the hell is going on in the wiring with this building? This triggers another cutscene in which we learn that Eddie has lost his wife, Angelina, years ago. From here, it's pretty clear that Angelina is portrayed by the same actress, Susan Volken, who appeared in Roger's Locket, making it pretty apparent early on that the two of them are father and son.
Ange? I really feel that you're with me here tonight.
A mouse gives us our next clue for what we can expect to come, and when we crawl on this cigar box under Eddie's bed, we see another cutscene that shows Angelina dying while giving birth. In addition to being gross, Bad Mojo tackles some pretty heavy themes, making it significantly darker than many other adventure games on the market. So we make our way up a nearby mop handle and onto a breaker box. Since I wasn't using a walkthrough, I wasn't sure what to do with this, so I left it. But if you're playing through and want to save yourself a lot of backtracking later, you'll want to use the diagram on the left screen and blow out the air conditioner. I noticed an open beer can placed very conveniently next to the radio just below some sleeping pills, so I found that if we nudge the bottle, a pill rolls out, which we can push into the can, triggering another movie of Eddie taking a swig and passing out. When he does this, he kicks the cigar box, creating a little bridge for us to cross into the broken outlet and enter the next room. Also, you can crawl on Eddie's face here. This game is not for the squeamish. After another clue from the Oracle, aka Roger's mom, we find ourselves in the bathroom. We enter the paper towel dispenser and push the lever down to drop the towels, giving us a path to crawl down on the floor. We find a silverfish who tells us about the smoke detector and a fire, alluding to something that will happen in the future.
This room has deeper meaning beyond the sacred rat. Watch the special screening outside the mirror crack. Tobacco leaves are smoking atop a porcelain god. If the paper bridge is stoking, it will rouse the sleeping guard.
And as we crawl near the sink, we discover the walls being guarded by the Rat King. To get past him, we have to take Roger up the wall, being careful not to get too close to the hole and into the medicine cabinet. I don't know about anybody else, but all throughout this game, I kept getting creeped out at the thought of roaches crawling all over my apartment like this. I do live in New York City where roaches are everywhere, and I did live in an apartment at one point that would get a roach every now and then, but thankfully where I'm at now, I haven't seen a roach in the 3 years I've been living here. I know that now that I said that out loud, I'm asking for an infestation. In the medicine cabinet, we have to go through the razor disposal slot, which just leads to the inside of the wall. I mean, this doesn't seem like the proper way to get rid of these razors, but whatever. Anyway, we push a nearby bolt, which knocks a pile of razors onto the rat, killing him. Now we can go back down into his lair, but not before a cutscene with Eddie taking a piss and leaving a lit cigarette on the urinal. This is the second time this dude left a lit cigarette somewhere, and being the landlord, he should have some inkling as to what a horrendous fire hazard this building is. Through the rat hole, we see another message from the Oracle, and now we're in the kitchen. We start things off in this area by traveling down the fridge and across the floor until we find yet another mop handle to climb. This brings us onto the counter, which is a horrific sight to behold. We continue across this counter, going over this knife bridge, onto the stove and through this maze of spilled chili. We enter the stove through a missing knob and push this metal piece extinguishing the pilot light. At this point, I'm starting to wonder if Roger wants to figure out how to get back to being a human, or if he just wants to kill everyone. Now, through the hint from the dying catfish, we learn that we have to do something about the garbage disposal, which was left on for some reason, but after trying to knock the spoon in myself, I found that Roger wasn't quite heavy enough. Back on the stove, we see a baby roach trapped in between some sticky food stuff, so we head over to where he is and help free him. With this little guy on our back, we head back to the sink, where our weight is now enough to knock the spoon into the disposal, breaking it and allowing us access. Down here we go, through the drain and into the next room, the bar.
Many times, for the greatest men, these questions can never be answered. Do not ask, "Who am I?" Ask instead, "Who made me?" For great pain was suffered at your birth, but great love was the spark of your conception. Love can still flourish in the soil of death. This is the key to life eternal.
We begin this area by crawling inside the eye hole of a mounted swordfish and watch another cutscene where we get a hint about mixing drinks, something that we'll have to perform in just a bit.
These walls hold frozen memories, happiness and strife. One man's hidden enemies, a sad and broken life. In a dozen fancy bottles, life's sweet nectars dwell. A recipe's the motto for one man's living hell. Sip the colored fluid, each in strict progression. Remember all that you did and consume them in succession.
South of here down the wall, we get some more backstory, including the fact that Eddie was going to take his own life, but the ghost of his wife appeared and told him not to. We head across the baseball bat and find ourselves on the bar, traveling across the unsurprisingly disgusting surface. Despite taking place in the 50s, this game feels so 90s with its gross out content and industrial score. It's pretty incredible. We hop on this peanut shell and float across this beer stream, and on the next screen we find a recipe chart where we discover the ingredients to make a Bad Mojo cocktail. To do this, we have to climb to the top of each bottle in order, triggering a little movie for each one, with the final bottle transporting us to the next area, the place where it all started, Roger's room.
If you hear me now, then you have truly sacrificed. Know the chain reaction that is part of all things. Remember, every action ripples and ripples and ripples. Mounting energy that bloats and festers until there is a spark, and then all is lost in fire. But it is never too late to help those in the path of the fire. They need only to be warned in time.
The first thing we do after crawling onto Roger's desk is check the messages on the machine, both of which are from work telling him that he's in big trouble. A clue from a butterfly tells us about the fax, so we have to climb on top of the shelf that's above where we currently are and hotwire this fan to blow copy paper into it. Then we have to go back down onto the fax machine and hit the start button, causing a bridge of paper to form, allowing us to head down off the desk onto the suitcase below. Here's something annoying that happened to me a couple times throughout my playthrough. Before I went down the paper bridge, I wanted to explore the desk more, so I ended up finding this pipe that led back to the main hub where you access the various different rooms. The problem here is none of the pipes are labeled, and there's really no indicator as to which one goes where. To make matters worse, it seems like every time you end up in the hub area, the camera is focused on a random pipe, so I would frequently end up going to the wrong room. Eventually, I figured out where all of them were based on the lights in the back, but by this point I was at the end of the game. So we go down the paper trail and head inside the suitcase to see a cutscene involving Roger as a child with a nun taking away his toy, which his father gave him.
The man who gave that toy to you is a worthless bum who abandoned you and left you with nothing but a hideous locket and that pathetic monkey.
That's not true. He would have kept me if he could.
He never wanted you. It was because of you that he lost your mother. She died while having you.
The characters are all way more fleshed out than they needed to be, which is something I really appreciated with this game. As we explore the rooms, we find all kinds of pictures, articles, and mementos that give us small morsels of their past. These elements don't necessarily pertain to the overall narrative, but enrich the two main characters way more than what a cutscene could do. As a roach, we see into their lives in a deeper way than the characters may want us to, allowing us to truly get to know them in an organic and enriching manner.
No. Your role here is not to propose and develop new wonder compounds. It is to assist the senior staff with their research.
But doctor, I can tell you...
Case closed. Dismissed.
Back on top of the suitcase, we push this cigarette out of the way and step on the remote to turn it on, triggering another cutscene.
If you see me now, then you have also seen a man who's lost all hope.
He's running, trying to hide from all the anger and fear that has plagued him. You cannot run from fear, for no matter where you go or what lies you may believe, truth always stares back at you from the mirror.
Next, we see our butterfly friend from up on the desk, who gives us a ride to the other side of the room on another table. Traveling to the left side of this table and down the leg, we walk across the controller for a heating pad, and it looks like Franz finally caught us. I neglected to mention this, but in several of the other rooms, if you get too close to the door, he'll swat you. But no, what happens is Franz knocks over an aquarium and gets scared off, but knocks us onto the floor at the same time. Traveling a few screens down, we find Roger's human body, a husk without a soul, laying lifeless on the floor next to the locket. We hang out with some of our roach buddies congregating there and watch another cutscene. Climbing up a nearby 2x4 and into a vent, we end up in Roger's bathroom and look around the various burnt articles that he left in the tub. It's funny to think that he was just going to split and leave Eddie with this giant mess. Can you imagine that guy cleaning anything, let alone the mess that someone else created? Back through the vent, we travel across this bulletin board, which kind of shows how Roger is a bit of a psycho, and through the break in the cobwebs, we head through the AC vent. This is where I ended up having to backtrack all the way to the breaker box and blow the fuse, and then go all the way back.
Everything is relevant and nothing is real. Time now has meaning and the bell tolls for thee. The spark is ready and waiting. You barely have time to act. Remember all that you have seen. Recall all that you have heard. Flush your memory of tainted thoughts. Act decisively. That which smolders may awaken the dreamer. Run from the fire, but not the flames. The answer is family, not fortune and fame.
Now it's time to finish this thing once and for all, so we head back to the bathroom and up the urinal to push the lit cigarette over the edge. Back on the ground, we push the cigarette to the paper towels and watch as Eddie grabs his stuff, runs out of the building, not bothering to alert any of the other tenants or just Roger if he's the only tenant. We quickly scurry back to Roger's lifeless corpse and onto the locket, triggering its magic once again and transferring Roger's consciousness back into his body. He grabs the case full of cash and exits the building just in time to watch it explode with Eddie.
Did you smell the gas?
What the hell was that? Hey, where'd you get this?
That was my mother's.
Oh my God. I gave that to her. Your mother's? My Angelina?
What are you talking about?
Look.
You're my father?
Yeah. I must be. I don't freaking believe it.
I learned that there are multiple endings where Eddie and Roger can get killed, but apparently I got the good ending where they realize that they're father and son and head down to Mexico to live out their days on the beach, sipping margaritas and establishing the love they thought they would never have again. And that's Bad Mojo, a quirky, ambitious game. While it's certainly not perfect, it brought a truly unique experience. It's the type of game you just don't see get made anymore, and I applaud the creative team behind this for setting out to craft such a daring piece of interactive media. If you're curious to learn more about the production of the game, and trust me, it's a fascinating story, the 2004 Redux came with a making of DVD that's actually available on YouTube right now, so I recommend giving it a look. I'll include a link in the description. And that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think I should tackle next, and if you dig this series, consider subscribing to this channel. Until next time, my name is Adam Patterson, and I'll see you later.